Design Expo component, the Microsoft Research Faculty Summit. Here we go. Please welcome Lili Cheng, the General Manager of Microsoft's Fuse Labs, and from New York University, Professor and author Clay Shirky, and student Omer Shapira, participant at the Expo. So, Lili, as the co-chair of this year's Design Expo, start by giving the viewers some background on the event.
Sure. This is actually the 10th year that we've done the Design Expo. I know. And
we should have gotten you something, like a bouquet or something.
I know, 10 stars.
All right.
So the reason we work with design students, I think, is we really like to sort of expand our, the ideas that we see for what the future is going to be like. And so not only do we work with students, so this is one of the few things that we do at the Faculty Summit that just really focuses on schools. We also give the same problem to different design schools around the world. And so we kind of get a global perspective as well as a perspective from the design community and also from students.
Well, I mean, we can see the importance of marrying good design, good computing. Explain a little bit, I mean, you sort of did there, how the Design Expo works. Whose work is shown? How are the participants selected?
Sure. So every year we pick different schools, top design schools around the world. So this year we have 9 schools, and we pick a topic. This year, we've had a lot of schools do this for a long time, so NYU is a school that we love to work with, and so Clay was actually asking me, what's the topic this year? And I was like, I don't know, what would you like to see?
Right.
So Clay had actually wrote the brief this year, but we had a lot of schools saying, we're really interested in big data, but really, what can you do with it that's meaningful? And how might this actually make the world a better place? How might it impact your local community or your governments and things like that? Because so much of this data has really impacted the way people communicate and just sort of interact with the world around them. So that's the problem. So we pick a problem, and then we pick schools, and we have a different, and we basically give them a little program, and each school has a semester-long class on the topic. And it's really run like a design studio. People have these sort of interdisciplinary groups, and they build projects, and each school then picks the best project from their school, and they all come out to Microsoft together, and then each school will do a short presentation and show their work to the whole Faculty Summit audience, and we'll also be projecting this live, so people who aren't here can also see it.
Well, turn to Clay. Talk about your involvement. You were the sponsor for New York University's prototype for their team, right?
Yep, I teach at the Interactive Telecommunications program, and the way we took the brief was we asked ourselves, when you're thinking about all of these new sources of data, big data, sensor data, social data, all of the stuff that's being thrown off by your phone every minute, how can you articulate that data in a way that keeps the individual user in mind? It's very easy to come up with ideas for big data that assume very large corporate or organizational interests. In fact, one of the stories I told in the first day of class was the famous Target can tell when you're pregnant, the store Target can tell when you're in your second trimester simply from watching your shopping patterns. So the design brief for this class was, whatever else you imagine doing with these data sources, it has to be useful for an individual user. And this is, I think, one of the places where involving designers in the interdisciplinary work really matters, because if you have to keep the human at the end of the chain in mind, you think about ways to use the data differently than if it's simply what kind of algorithms can we bring to bear on what kind of data sets. And we actually found during the semester that trying to find uses for all of this data that ramified for the individual, not for an organization, not for a business, not for a government, was a surprisingly hard problem. There's lots and lots of ways to think about big uses of big data, but in a way, making the value proposition, what someone would get out of it, simple enough that an individual user could make use of it in their own lives. That turned out to be a really fruitful thing to be working on.
So you came up with the idea for the Urban Design Challenge for your team. Why?
So I didn't. Yeah. So in fact, I didn't. All I came up with was the framing, and I then said to the
student.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is something Lili was saying.
Should have known.
Having the backstop for the students to work with is really what we're in the business of doing.
Okay.
The students then come up with the ideas and then work with feedback and develop the ideas as they go along.
Well, then I just teed you up, Omer.
Yeah, well, so I guess, the thing that's different from most designers that we did, our team, which is a developer for Microsoft, ex-developer for Microsoft, a UX researcher, a journalist at ABC, and me, we did, we actually sort of went through directly to the big data instead of like talking about show the results, so on. We talked about how to take that data exactly and turn it upside down so the user, the small citizen, the user can use it. Our project, Mind.tl, is essentially a service that allows you to see what data miners see about you and helps you control it. What we did, we looked at most of what data mining is useful for today, which is, it ranges from credit ratings. They profile you before your mortgage. They profile you before you apply for a job. They profile you before you go on a dating site. So we used all of these uses of data, and we said, well, the thing that's in common for them is that nobody, as a user, knows about this at all. If you're talking about something, if you have data on Facebook, you don't know that that data is being used for the preparation of a report about you. You don't know that while you tweet or while you check in at pubs, you are lowering you're actually magnifying your health insurance because your health risk right now. So we set about building a platform that takes all of that data and turns it into reports instead of for companies, for users. Hey, you Foursquare checked in McDonald's 15 times in the past 2 months. You're in for a bigger health insurance premium. Stop checking in or stop going.
Right.
But it also, so the other side of it is not only the machine analysis, it's also the human analysis, because a lot of times when you're being spied on online, you're being spied on by HR specialists or by investigators. So we used the small community that has now been essentially forged by the Snowden leak. There is a community that really wants to help each other sort of maintain privacy or dignity in the online age. So we used that community and we said, hey, review yourselves. Help each other present each other the way that you want.
Right.
So every user is now responsible for helping another user talk about, present his best photos or his most relevant to his persona that he wants to present, or hide certain features that he doesn't want HR people to see.
Right.
Everybody deserves a second chance. It's just like the former CEO of Google said, basically, teens, after they've passed 21, will need a new profile, a new name,
Right.
a new personality.
Sure.
We're trying to give that.
Right. Well, so obviously your team did very well. The prototype Mind. Boiling down what you just said, I've always thought that I'm very happy that I'm not of the generation that's at high school or college right now, because I may not have made the best choices. Right. What I should Facebook, where I should
photographic
check in.
evidence is not
at
permanent.
the time. If there was that track record, so Mind really can tell what inferences prospective employers, which is a little bit scary, might think about me based on tweets, Facebook postings, but it could give me an opportunity to sort of change these conclusions.
Yeah, and I think actually, everybody has stories about like the terrible picture or the picture. Clay keeps telling me in class, there is a picture in someone's yearbook. If that was online, if it was online, he wouldn't get a job anywhere. So I guess we like our service will allow people to take that picture, to find that picture, and to say, okay, this is funny only within your private community. And the thing is, context is a major contributor to this, because if you're checking in pubs 5 times a week, then you're with friends, you know that. Your health insurance does not. And your HR recruiter does not know that it was very funny, like in Clay's case, to set his hair on fire at one time, like I said.
That's the photo of me. If it was up there, I would never have.
Okay.
Or like
You're not going to do that anymore.
I can't do that anymore. I'm all done.
so I'm sorry if I mentioned that.
That's quite all right. The photo doesn't exist anywhere, so it's all hearsay.
I guess like if there's one photo, if there's one event that exists somewhere in your past, and it's not evil. It's not like everyone makes mistakes, and it's not a mistake if you make it. It's just that like you work in media. It can be used against you in every case.
Sure.
Like in almost every way to turn against you. Sorry. So we give people the opportunity to make that transition and say, hey, okay, this does not work outside the people who know me, but when it's online, everybody knows that.
Sure. No, I think that's a really interesting distinction because I have this topic has come up before, and I've always thought, myself included, but a lot of people I thought, wow, yeah, out of context, somebody like Stephen King, the things he's typing online and searching, people who are writing novels, things, these horrific things, they could be profiled as these awful people, and maybe it's research, maybe it's, has nothing to do with who they actually are.
And also, as Omer said, and Dana, one of the things we read in class around this, Dana Boyd talks about the invisible audience, the fact that people, when they're acting on social media, are often not aware that there is this potentially enormous audience that's also potentially very long-lived. So an action that feels like me and 5 friends in some, 10-minute context can actually be found 2 years later by, the HR department in a business on the other coast. One of the things that mine does is it gives people essentially a mirror. A way to see how they look to other people,
right?
And I think that addition of context is one of the has been really one of the most fruitful discussions around the project we've had all semester.
Well, and certainly you're bringing up that distinction of we can be a little bit misled in our own circles by, hey, I got 10 likes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are your friends who maybe are like-minded, but outside of that circle, maybe not so much.
And also that there's that is actually the other illusion of the age of big data, the number of likes. So you know how some companies that deal with big data measure things in a very coarse way. Likes is a very coarse way of measuring things, and it's being done because natural language processing is its very first steps, even after 50 years. There is no good way to measure data online, especially social data, so people use likes, and likes are a terrible measure.
Right.
And when you look at the stuff that people have got the most likes for, you usually find the most extreme things that they posted, which is always wrong in the sense that you're looking for, that you are an HR man, you would be looking for the most liked things first. So you'd find the most extreme things, or the most incredible things. So it could be a large achievement, but it also could be a really drunk tweet. So that's why not only does the context matter, but also removing the numbers, removing the popularity that is actually auxiliary to the person. When, like the person who's reporting his own life through tweets or so on, removing that sort of quantity, those quantities, removing those weights to help you make the right decision as a data miner, even, is a really important step if we're going to deal with big data for the rest of from now to the future.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and I want to open this up a little bit, talk about some of the other students' projects, which I'm sure not as good as mine. None of them will be bad. But I want to talk to Lili about some of the other entries. Yeah, what are some of the other neat things you saw?
There's really a range of projects. I'll just give you sort of a range of some of them. So probably on a very different end, we have a really amazing project from UCLA. So there's a student there who is really an artist. And he is working, I don't know if you know who Frank Gehry is, awesome architect, and he's built the Walt Disney Hall for the LA Philharmonic downtown Los Angeles. And so what this guy's doing is he's using the conductors, one famous conductor's output, using the Connect to his motion, and then he's projecting inside the hall kind of these amazing visualizations in the space that are sort of projected on the space, and then they also project on the outside of the building. And so he's gonna show that work. And it's just, you see this work and you're like, we just took sculpture and art and projection to a completely different level. And it's just amazing to see kind of these students doing this. I was looking at this guy and I was like, he's total rock star, and he's famous, but he's going to be, like another Leo Villa. He's going to be another, person that you see, and it's just really interesting. I used to be an architect, so it's really fun for me to see people pushing data so often that's been, in your little PC, kind of out in the world, and how might people just experience that.
Right.
So I think that's really cool. We have kind of another project. It's a light. It's from a school. It's called Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And so their thought was, a lot of times people kind of have their phones, and even if we're sitting at the table together, we're not really interacting. So they have a light, and built into it it's a projector, a computer, and it'll project onto the table a little map of where you are, a really beautiful little diagram. It might just look like a pattern. And then if something happens in a particular place near you, it kind of ripples like water on the table. And you can put your cell phone there and kind of use it as a display or share things together. So it's kind of this, how might you actually get a small group of people to use just the physical objects around them to interact more together. So these are really different projects. I mean, mine is really about how this information can really help me. The UCLA project is really about, data from one person just conducting and how that might sort of blast out and impact an audience or a city. And then, we have sort of the middle ground, which is a small group of people. How might data change them? But what I really love about, really all the projects from the Design Expo is I think one of the amazing things that designers do is they're so good at taking a really big abstract concept and just making it real.
Yeah.
So how does it really affect your life, your day-to-day life, something that you experience? Because one of the things that I think, despite all this big data, is a lot of people are like, whatever. It's just like a big diagrams and lots of graphs. And, in the end, you're just maybe trying to make a really simple decision, not...
Right.
You don't want all the little knobs that you might use to make that decision. And people, I think, sometimes are overwhelmed with big data. And I think designers are really great at sort of simplifying and making you laugh about it. Maybe it becomes emotional. It's just funny. And that's what incents you to make a better decision or a different decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and Clay, this has got to be kind of a proud papa moment for you to see your students doing so well, and no pressure, but you're doing tomorrow night's closing keynote.
Yeah.
We're only webcasting today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Bill Gates opened things up.
Yes, no, I know.
So he's
Same
your opening act.
stage.
So just when you go back to NYU, tell him Bill Gates was my opener.
Right.
I was the closer. I was the headliner.
Yeah.
A little preview of what you might be talking about tomorrow, unless maybe you haven't even made it up.
No. I am talking about essentially what we were talking about in class this whole semester, which is places where human factors and data sort of co-evolve. There are certainly deep problems in just amassing enormous sets of data and being able to crawl over it, run algorithms against it, understand things from it. But as a design school, what we're interested in is places where when you have to make the data useful to individuals, what does your attitude towards it have to be? What are some ways to think about it? It's been a fascinating conversation this semester. I'm going to be telling essentially some stories that came out of the research, the students' observations, talking about ways in which when you think about all of this data we now have access to and how little of the design work has yet been done to make it useful to people like you and me, that's a huge field that we can and should be digging in. That's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow.
So you probably have to get out here and get over to pyrotechnic run-throughs and stuff like that, right? You come out through a
my entrance music is Mr. Boom.
Motorcycle jumping onto the stage, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, no, alas, it's just slides.
Well, fascinating stuff, and good luck to you
Thank
tomorrow
you so
night.
much.
And that's it. We're out of time. We do have to return to the Microsoft Conference Center there. Doug Berger, ready to give tonight's closing address. But a big thanks to you guys for being here, putting you in the hot seat, jumping in here live. No pressure, there's people around the world. Tomorrow night, it'll just be people live in front of you in the conference center. But half of them will be on their phones.
Right, exactly. They're all going to be, we have to give them the Eindhoven thing and get them all to
Exactly.
put their phones out.
Absolutely. So we are going to kick things over.
Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.